In class, we talked about how to determine if a source is reliable or credible. And the most important way that I found to do this was by looking at the author, because if an author is credible or reliable, they normally have a background that they don't want to ruin. For example, our President Trump is a Republican. When people write things about him that are not Republican, which are Democrats, it might seem biased towards them. So it is important to know who your author is.
In class, we learned about evaluating sources and by seeing if they were independent, if they were named, and if they had multiple sources. And if they didn't, then usually they were not credible and they leaked false information. By learning this, I was able to distinguish which was real and which was inaccurate, because many times in magazines and news sources, they use false information to make the story more interesting and appealing to the audience.
So in Ms. Schroeder's class, we had to investigate Twitter resources, and by that we analyzed who it was by and the story they were telling. And this is important to learn inside the real world, because the media can influence your thoughts in various ways, and you need to evaluate what they say and how they say it and like where the information comes from.
So I watched this show called Last Week Tonight with John Oliver, and they covered this one story about aunt who was suing her nephew for hurting her with a hug, and that was the base story that news was covering, which wasn't the full story. And everybody hopped on a bandwagon of yelling at her, and she couldn't find a job, and it basically ruined her life for a minute. In class, we learned about how stories can be mistold or misinterpreted by the sources that they come from. And immediately when I was hearing about the story on the show, I was a little bit skeptical because of the class. And sure enough, it wasn't the full story. Turns out that when the kid jumped on her to hug her, ended up hurting her, and she didn't have the money to get the surgery that she needed. So the insurance company needed her to place blame or put it on somebody to get the money.